Happy Halloween and welcome to the October 2021 edition of Hunt Camp Mail. This month, I received over 50 letters. You heard that right, 50 letters. I spent a whole day or two going through all of them, trying to pick which ones to use in this month's episode. I'll try to answer everybody's mail by at least responding through email, but my mailbox has reached the point where I could only pick the quick and to the point questions or questions that really stand out to me to use in these Hunt Camp Mail videos. Also, try to keep it to only one question. Dozens of you are sending me emails with literally 10 or more questions in them. There just doesn't seem to be enough hours in a day for me anymore. So for my busy lifestyle, quick and to the point questions are better for me. Well, I'm finally feeling about 80% again after the whole COVID thing, and I got back into the swing of things, I think. I went scouting, hunting, and fishing this month. I bagged some tasty quail for the quail opener, and even went out to sea for some tuna and dorado one last time before the water turns cold for the season. October was actually a pretty good month, and I really needed a good month. My 6.8 Western video got a huge reaction from people who like it or hate it. I'm starting to realize that 6.8 is a very polarizing cartridge. My habitat loss video was also very well received. I've had that video in my unfinished projects file for a long time and decided to finally finish it after a long time. I still have about 20 unfinished videos just lingering in that file because I either lost interest or other YouTube creators swooped in and did some videos similar to those, or, the material for those videos are just incomplete in my opinion. But I think you're going to love this month's Hunt Camp Mail. I actually got responses from a few actual game wardens concerning last month's Hunt Camp Mail. It's always interesting to hear things from their perspective, and they provided some great insights with their letters. So enough small talk, let's get to this month's mail. Our first letter is from a Northern California game warden. Just so you know, this game warden gave me his full name and contact information, but I'm personally choosing not to disclose that information to you. But trust me, I verified that this guy is a real California game warden, and for the purposes of this video, I'll call him NorCal Warden to protect his identity. NorCal Warden wrote, Desert Dog, I just watched your September Hunt Camp Mail episode, and I want to congratulate you on another great episode. I was especially interested in your take on the interaction with game wardens. I'm currently working as a game warden just a couple of counties north of you. I found your take on the difference in the actions of each individual officer spot on. And yes, it's true. There are some very good and some very badge-heavy officers. I'm writing to clarify one point on the search or inspection of a game warden. Although a hunter or angler may decline a search, when it comes to hunting and fishing, a warden in California may inspect most containers and vessels. The details of this can be found in the Fish and Game Code 1006. I'm writing you so you can provide the most accurate information to your audience. If I can help with anything, feel free to contact me. From NorCal Warden. And so to my California viewers out there, this is what that part of the game code states. The department may inspect the following: all boats, markets, stores, and other buildings, except dwellings, and all receptacles except the clothing actually worn by a person at the time of inspection, where birds, mammals, fish, reptiles, or amphibia may be stored, placed, or held in storage. Well, I want to thank you for reaching out to my channel with that clarification of the law. I reviewed the Fish and Game Code 1006, and you're absolutely correct. The game code basically states that a California warden can inspect any container or vessel in your vehicle if it can fit an animal in it. I've personally seen a game warden open a fisherman's cooler and confiscate his catfish after being cited for fishing without a license. So I guess it does serve a purpose. I want to thank you for your letter and for the clarification on that law. Our next question is from Paul in the UK. Paul asked, "Hi, Desert Dog. Always enjoy your videos and informed advice. Have you done any hunting with the 4570 government? And if so, what species, loads, etc.? Might you do a future video on this fine cartridge that has more than stood the test of time?" Probably not, Paul. Unfortunately, I personally think that the 4570 is an overrated cartridge. It has pretty crappy ballistics for usual hunting distances on medium-sized game, but with much more recoil than your typical deer round. It's also severely lacking in power for things like dangerous African game. Honestly, there isn't anything you could ever shoot with the 4570 that I wouldn't rather shoot with my 30-06. Honestly, I think the 30-30 is a more well-rounded, practical cartridge than the 4570 is. So although it's fun to shoot, it's the last thing on my mind when I decide to go hunting. So I probably won't do a video on that. And our next question is from Stephen from New York. Stephen wrote, "I'm not a hunter, but I go trout fishing with my son a couple times a year. I found your channel when I was researching videos on COVID experiences, and your video was the most sensible. I watched a couple of your other videos and made the decision that my son and I are going to get our hunting licenses and start hunting. So your channel may be life-altering in more ways than one. My question concerns something that you didn't mention in your COVID video. What was it like dealing with friends and family members that you were isolated from?" Well, thank you very much for the compliment, Stephen. And I hope you and your son enjoy a lifetime of hunting and fishing together. Your question about COVID is very insightful, and I actually had to think on it for a while. To my wife and I, the worst part about dealing with other people during COVID was that everyone you know instantly turns into a PhD virologist and an expert on everything COVID related. Your friends and family members who have no scientific background and have never even experienced COVID themselves will try to be your personal doctors and just bombard you with crap that they dig up from all over the internet. Honestly, it got so bad that we just had to tune a lot of people out, turn off social media and work through it without all the noise from family and friends. I love my family and friends a great deal, but we're the type of people who don't like all the attention that COVID brought. But that was a great question. That's actually very relevant to the overall COVID experience. And our next question is from Paul in California. I get 2 Pauls this month. Paul in California wrote, "Hello, Desert Dog, longtime watcher, first-time emailer. Thank you very much for your informative channel. I learned something new from every episode, especially the one about hunting ethics. Hunt Camp Mail is a favorite of mine, and I enjoy listening to your well-thought-out philosophies. By chance, were you at the Pearsonville Shell Station on Friday afternoon? I live in Los Angeles and was driving up to Mammoth. The unwritten rule is not to bother celebrities when they're out in public. Anyway, I hope you and your wife are well." Thanks for the compliments, Paul. And I appreciate that you enjoy my channel a lot. You just might have had a rare desert dog sighting out in the wild. And if there's one thing I'm not a celebrity. I'm just a guy who goes to work every morning, comes home every afternoon and likes to spend his hard-earned cash on hunting and fishing. But I'm totally approachable, man. Don't be afraid to say hello if you see me out there. And our next question is from Liam from South Africa. Liam wrote, "What is your process when starting load development? I understand range time and data collection, but when it comes to powders, bullets, and brass you have to test, what is the easiest and most cost-efficient way to do it? Also, when is Swamp Doggy coming back?" Another Swamp Doggy question. Well, it seems, Liam, that you already understand the load development process itself. Basically, finding your velocity node and then fine-tuning seating depth for accuracy. So I think you're asking me about selecting components to start with. I always use high-quality brass to start. Norma, Nosler, and Lapua brass are great places to start because you'll never have to second guess your brass as a problem again. I choose my powders by specific burn rate properties for different bullet weights for each cartridge. My bullets are probably the easiest choice of all. Basically, a bullet that's going to optimize my kill potential within the velocity envelope I'll be shooting animals at. And who the hell knows about Swamp Doggy, Liam? I'll probably have to see that bastard for the holidays at family get-togethers, so maybe I'll get drunk enough to commit to letting him do another video, but I hope not. Our next question is from Rich from Arizona. Rich wrote, "Hey Desert Dog, in your September hunt camp video, you addressed a comment which attempted to paint game wardens with a negative brush. So I thought I'd share an experience as a rebuttal. In 2018, I did a solo public land pronghorn hunt in Wyoming. And on the third day, I encountered a conservation officer. After respectfully providing him with all the requested paperwork and a 20-minute conversation, the officer offered to assist me by distracting two distant goats with his truck while I was able to stalk within a reasonable distance to fill my tag. When the game was over, he took pictures with my phone and helped me drag the goat about 500 yards to my vehicle. Perhaps this went above and beyond, but it also demonstrates the importance of not making assumptions about wardens or anything else, and just how far a little bit of respect and courtesy will get you. I hope you guys are recovering from the crud and will be out chasing quail in the coming days." That was a nice letter. Well, that's a great story, Rich, and mirrors my experience in dealing with all but a couple of game wardens in my lifetime. Most game wardens are diehard hunters and anglers themselves and love to see people like you and I have successful hunts and great experiences outside. I did go out for a couple hours on the morning of the quail opener, and I did get some birds. I think the drought has brought the bird numbers down a little bit, but they're still out there. Our next question is from George in Australia. George wrote, "Hi, Desert Dog. I sent you a link about hunting game animals versus farmed animals and relative carbon footprints. I thoroughly enjoy your YouTube presentations, despite not engaging with your anti-socialist sentiments. Habitat destruction is a consequence of uncontrolled development by real estate and farming interests here in Australia as well. The capitalist imperative to profit by any means. Love your support for ethical hunting." Well, looks like I got a Australian socialist here. George, you're correct about habitat loss being a consequence of uncontrolled development. I mean, that's a fact. But I think you're off the mark about capitalism being the cause. In fact, no facts support that assumption. China is experiencing habitat loss on a scale far bigger than that of the United States. China is also the world's largest polluter and is single-handedly responsible for over a third of the world's pollution. Biodiversity is absolutely plummeting in China as citizens ravage the wildlife for profit at any means, as you put it. We see the same thing in Laos, Vietnam, and North Korea. Cuba is suffering from huge deforestation right now, and Cuba's lost about 10% of its forest in less than 10 years. Yet, these are all communist or Marxist countries. Isn't that the opposite of capitalism? What about the good socialists of the world, the so-called democratic socialists? Have you seen Venezuela lately? The Amazon rainforest in Venezuela is disappearing right now at an alarming rate as the government allows uncontrolled mining operations to take place there. For, how did you put that? Profit at any means. Like all countries too, people are also migrating out of the large cities en masse to claim and cultivate wild places. In last year, the European Commission released a report stating that only 16% of the EU's wild places are in good health. The leading causes of this were stated as being habitat loss and fragmentation. Russia lost almost 40 million acres of forest in less than 10 years, and India is just a train wreck of biodiversity loss right now. And don't even get me started with the African continent, which is just being raped of its resources by China right now. The fact is that in developed countries, people are moving out of the cities that are just riddled with unchecked crime, congestion, and filth right now, and moving to the outskirts of these cities and into rural areas. As these outskirts are eventually developed and consumed by the city, people keep creating more developments on the outskirts. This is known as urban sprawl. And this is the problem with much of Europe, Canada, and the United States right now. Remember, the area around central Los Angeles used to be urban sprawl, but now it's a concrete jungle. But the fact is that people are leaving large cities in droves right now and setting up residence in areas formerly occupied by wildlife. As social norms break down and leftist mentalities become more mainstream, cities are becoming cesspools of crime and anarchy, and people want to leave them. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have developing countries and most communist and Marxist countries where the welfare of the people is so bad and horrendous that the act of surviving another day takes priority over the environment. Killing everything you can eat, dumping buckets of shit into rivers, and cutting down every tree for firewood is a way of life in those societies. But you can hardly blame that on capitalism. In fact, capitalism would probably fix those problems. In order to address habitat loss, societies need to focus less on political ideology and climate change and more on planning and human behavior. Unfortunately, I really don't see that happening. And our next piece of mail is from a game warden in Southern California. Again, I won't use this warden's real name, so we'll call him SoCal Warden. SoCal Warden wrote, "I've been watching your channel for a year now, and I absolutely love the video on hunting ethics. I'm a retired game warden who spent most of my career just south of you. I'm writing because I watched the September hunt camp mail yesterday and could not get that California game warden question out of my head. I thought your response was fair and respectful, but the question itself had negative undertones. In your answer, you stated that people tend to get a victim mentality when they deal with law enforcement, even when the warden is just doing their job and following the law by asking to see their license. I experience this animosity almost every day as a warden, and I thank you for publicly bringing it up and explaining to hunters that we have no ulterior motive when approaching them. I also want to thank you for explaining how difficult and dangerous a warden's job can be. I've been muzzled by hunters hundreds of times and even had hunters experience negligent discharges right in front of me. I have come across growing operations by Mexican drug cartels, encountered armed gang members, and have seen numerous dead bodies in that line of work. I have caught people poaching bears out of season and filling up buckets with thousands of crappie from a lake. I witnessed people doing unimaginable harm to wildlife in California, and game wardens are right there to protect wildlife and their habitat. I want to thank you for openly promoting ethical hunting and for the hours of enjoyment that your videos provide. From SoCal Warden. Well, thank you very much for the letter and for the gracious compliments. I really appreciate the job that game wardens do, and I think it's important for everyone to understand that they're there for our benefit as well as the benefit of the wonderful wildlife we have. That was a great letter. And our next question is from Kendrick from Fairbanks, Alaska. Kendrick wrote, "Hey, Desert Dog, my name is Kendrick. I grew up in a village in Alaska. I still live in Alaska, but in Fairbanks now. I started hand loading a year before the pandemic. I try to stick to good bullets and good powders. I came across H4350, believe it or not. I have 165 grain TSXs I plan to load. I watched your video on powders for the 30-06 and appreciate the content. Do you use exact load data from barns? What spectrum of charge weight can I expect the best accuracy and highest velocity?" Well, thank you for contacting me from the top of the world, Kendrick. Should be getting pretty cold there about now. The old 30-06 with H4350 pushing the 165 grain TSX is just a fantastic combination. In fact, I shot that same combo for years before I switched over to the 168 grain TTSX. All barrels, primers, and brass will give different velocities and pressure. So don't use my exact load data. Actually, don't copy anybody's load data. But with H4350 and the 165 grain TSX, I usually start at just under 54 grains and work up from there. Look for an accuracy node in the 2,800 feet per second area and beyond. With some guns, I can work up well over 2,900 feet per second, and in other guns, I can barely get over 2,800 feet per second. So load development is always specific to your gun, not mine. And our next question is from Thomas from Belgium. Thomas wrote, "My oldest son is 19 months now, and my youngest is yet to be born in December. Of course, I will introduce my boys to hunting and fishing, but they can choose freely to proceed with it or not." It's a good idea. Hunting is continuously in a bad spotlight these days with the so-called liberals on every corner ready to call us murderers. I don't want my children to be looked at in a bad way or get in trouble because we hunt, both by other kids and adults, school teachers, etc. How can I avoid such potential situations, and how do I handle it if my kids really get looked down on because of hunting? What is your experience? Thank you, and Weidmanns Heil. Well, that's a very deep question, and probably more specific to how assertive parents are in dealing with situations. So I'm only able to offer you advice from my own perspective. In America, specifically the shit-kicking redneck town I live in, that sort of thing really isn't a problem among children, but leftist teachers can be a problem and often are a huge issue with something like that. I've actually had a run-in with one of my oldest son's junior high school teachers over something similar to this. But all I can tell you is I raised my boys to be strong and independent. Mental strength is very important, and fewer children are raised with it these days. But just to clarify, when I say mental strength, I don't mean mentally or physically abusing your children so they get tough. That's not right. What I mean is to teach your children that life isn't some fair utopia where everyone should just magically be happy all the time and get equal shares of everything. You need to teach them that everything has to be earned in life, even respect. Children are taught in today's schools that basically everybody's a victim now, but you have to convince your children that they're not victims of anything. Challenge your kids to figure things out for themselves and do things for themselves so they don't become physically and emotionally dependent on other people. And most importantly, reward this independent behavior. On the hunting front of it, you need to explain to your children why we hunt and the ethics of hunting. Keep it up until your kids can make a coherent argument back to you. This way, they have the confidence to verbally justify hunting to others when they're confronted by anti-hunters. It's also important to point out when the media or uninformed people are just flat out wrong, so they learn that not everything they hear is the truth. In the end, confident, mentally strong children won't care about what other children think or say. They'll pick like-minded friends who accept who they are rather than picking friends by social status. They won't capitulate to other people out of fear, and they'll be less likely to give in to peer pressure. And that's probably the best answer I can give you, Thomas. And our next question, if I can get all this, is from Dave. He didn't say where he was from, but Dave asked about 15 or more questions in one email. So I'm picking the first one and I'm going with that. Dave wrote, you covered Barnes bullets a lot in your videos, and you stated that LRX is the most accurate for you, but the accuracy nodes are narrow. You've said that the TTSX is easier to find a good load for. Barnes recommends starting with a seating depth 50 thousandths off the jam. I've also gathered that the bullets seem to fit looser in the neck than other bullets loaded the same way. You did a video in which Barnes factory ammo also had loose bullets. Why do you think they tend to be loose, and what do you do to avoid it? Well, the loose bullets have absolutely nothing to do with the bullets themselves. It was the cause of poor manufacturing and quality control at the Barnes ammo plant. Specifically, the cases had poor neck tension, so the bullets fit loosely. You know, sometimes bad lots of ammo go out. It happens to if you've been hunting long enough, you've seen every ammo manufacturer have bad lots of ammo. But we hope that the manufacturers own the mistake and make it right, which Barnes failed to do in that situation. I've loaded tens of thousands of rounds of TSXs, TTSXs, and LRXs. My hand loads have proper neck tension, so I've never had an issue. And our next question is from Russell from Houston, Texas. Russell wrote, "Hi, Desert Dog. Keep doing what you're doing. Your format is what everyone comes to depend on when they watch your videos. The truth you administer to the world is much needed. Just wondering what your thoughts are on carbon fiber barrels versus steel, such as the Savage 110 ultralights with the Proof Research barrel, as far as if you think they live up to what they claim to be." Well, there's a lot of hype and false claims about carbon fiber barrels that I've seen over the years. In real conditions, carbon fiber barrels are not more accurate, and they don't have longer barrel life than a good stainless barrel. The only real advantage that a carbon fiber barrel has is that it's light. And I'll admit, for a 257 Roberts or 6.5 Creed or 7mm Rod 8, that might be a great option. But for a 7mm Magnum or 30 caliber Magnum or a 338, that might not be a good thing. I shot a 30-06 with a carbon fiber barrel one time, and I didn't even really like that. By the way, I avoid muzzle brakes like the plague, and the balance is so far off on a lot of those rifles that you need a muzzle brake, which, is a lose-lose situation in my mind. I personally like well-balanced, soft-shooting rifles. This means a rifle should have weight in the right places. At the end of the day, I think my grandpa's old saying that it's better to take a pound off your pack than a pound off your rifle is still the truth today. And our next letter is from a game warden in Texas. And like before, I'm not going to make his name public, even though he gave it to me. We'll just call him Texas Game Warden. Texas Game Warden wrote, "Greetings from Texas. I am a game warden with Texas Parks and Wildlife and found your channel after somebody told me about your hunting ethics video. I just watched your last hunt camp mail video on YouTube, and I think your assessment of game wardens is spot on. Like any profession, there's always a few bad ones that set the tone for public opinion, but most of us are serious about serving with a fair and respectful demeanor. You are also correct about people acting like victims of profiling when we simply ask them for their license and ask to see their fish. Hunters and fishermen never used to act this way, so I think it's a recent trend because of the media's portrayal of law enforcement. Anyways, please keep making the videos. My whole family loves them." Well, thank you very much for the letter, Texas Game Warden. I definitely think you're right about the media's portrayal of law enforcement, turning the general public into instant victims of law enforcement. The sad part, though, is I guess I expected more from my fellow hunters and anglers. The routine for game wardens hasn't changed in damn near 100 years. They're required to check your license and your tape to verify that you're legally hunting and fishing. Game wardens haven't changed. The public's perception of reality is what's changed. Our next question is from David from Ontario, Canada. David wrote, "Desert Dog, I really enjoyed your habitat loss video and completely agree. I'm an engineer working in an environmental field, and I've thought since I started in the 90s that habitat loss is the most serious environmental problem. Climate change hysteria is dangerous because it distracts from the real issues." As you saw in that video, David, our observations are exactly the same. You have to be blind not to see how wild habitat is being lost in the United States and Canada. It's no longer loggers or oil companies or ranchers that are to blame for most of the habitat loss. Most of them have really cleaned up their act over the decades. It's actually cities, counties, states, provinces, and other local government agencies that are the main issue these days. And I'm afraid to say this, but I think they're going to be harder to stop. And our next question is from Frank from Oregon. Frank wrote, "I watched your new steel shot for upland hunting video. At first I told myself I can't watch a 45-minute video, but I ended up glued to the TV for the entire 45 minutes. It's crazy how much good information you packed into that video. I noticed one discrepancy though. You showed a Mueller choke in your collection of improved cylinder chokes you were going to test, but gave no patterning results for that choke." You caught me. Very observant of you, Frank. I have some very aware subscribers out there, but you're correct. The truth is, I never tested the Mueller choke, but I actually made a 3-minute section of that video on that choke, but pulled that part, and several other parts of that video out because the rough draft of that video was over an hour long. But just because you asked, here's the Mueller choke section that I cut from that video. So before we leave the subject of chokes, I want to bring up a little commentary on Mueller chokes. I bought this $130 Mueller choke to use in this test, but I never got to test it. Let me give you a little back history with my experience with Mueller. A few years ago, I bought one of these U1 chokes to shoot clays with. And it was a pretty decent choke. I mean, not my best choke. As a matter of fact, I think my Riley chokes kind of did better than these. But the problem I had with it is at the time, I kind of bought into the hype. And the Mueller was stating that their aluminum alloy chokes are way stronger than any steel choke, and was going all over the internet saying you shouldn't use steel chokes and for blah 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 blah, and these are better, they're way stronger. But anyways, just sitting in the case, this choke bent. I mean, it's very fragile. I mean, it bends if you barely touch it, and this bent, and of course it was throwing off patterns and probably dangerous to shoot in the gun. So I sent it back. They sent me a new one. Probably used it a couple times, but I basically shelved this choke. It's not my favorite choke. I think it was kind of overpriced for what I got. So I put it on the shelf. And then they came out with their line of hunting chokes, which are, surprise, surprise, are stainless steel, just like everybody else's chokes, which is funny because they were saying that stainless steel chokes are junk. You need aluminum alloy, but now they're making stainless ones for hunting. And I decided, I'll give them a fair shot again. American-made company, might as well. But there's a problem with this choke. The reason I didn't test this choke, and you could see Optima HP 20 gauge. That's what this is. I have two of these. I have a friend who has one too, and this choke doesn't fit in any of them. You can see, you put it in the barrel and stops right there. Doesn't even get to the threads, and it won't go in. And I tried twisting it a little bit. I don't want to screw up this nice Beretta A400 Stelium barrel, so I didn't force it. My wife's, it goes in about that far and stops. And my friend's is about the same as mine. It doesn't go in. So I wasn't able to use this choke. So here's where things get really interesting. I contacted Mueller, and you know what they told me? They told me to use lapping compound on my barrel to make this choke fit. If using lapping compound on your A400 barrel so you can make one choke fit at the expense of all other chokes being too loose to use, if that sounds ridiculous, it's because it is ridiculous. I'll return this and I'll never buy from Mueller again. And our next question is from John from Phoenix, Arizona. John wrote, I have a question related to your steel shot video from October 21st. Since steel on dove and quail are not mandated here in Arizona yet, I'm starting from a point of complete ignorance. I believe you mentioned that you prefer number 6 steel for doves and number 5 steel for quail. Since it appears that the two of you use 20 gauge shotguns, would your thoughts on shot size change for different gauges? Absolutely not. A number 6 steel pellet going 1,500 feet per second from a 20 gauge has the exact same energy as a number 6 steel pellet doing 1,500 feet per second from a 12 gauge. Basically, the pellets hit with the exact same energy. The only advantage with the 12 gauge is that you get a higher volume of pellets per shell. But with a properly patterned gun, I find the 20 gauge to be the perfect upland cartridge because I can easily get all the pellets within the desired radius, but it won't be so much pellets that it destroys meat on small birds like dove and quail. So my properly patterned 12 gauge is 20 gauge is often outperforming most 12 gauges, but I get a lighter, slimmer gun that has less recoil. Our next question is from Dave from Canada. A lot of Canadian letters this month. Dave wrote, I'm a new fan of the 9.3 by 62. I got my moose up here in the Yukon with my own ammo. I'm also new to reloading and was wondering if you would share some of your reloading data with me. While I don't give out exact charge weights for liability reasons, I can give you some powder recommendations. IMR 4064 is a classic powder for the 9.3 by 62, especially with those 150 grainers. But, Reloader 15 is another great powder for that cartridge. And for me, though, it's all about the Varget with the 9.3 by 62. Personally, the Varget always does the best for me for that cartridge. Our next question is from Aryan. Aryan wrote, at the conclusion of your COVID-19 video, you said, quote, consult your personal doctor if you trust them, unquote. This statement left me perplexed. Why would somebody not trust a doctor? I guess that's a fair question, but let me start with a simple fact that should answer your question. Every year in the United States, depending on which study you believe, between 22,000 and 98,000 people die from medical malpractice. So it's probably safe to say that mistakes in the medical industry take about the same number of lives as suicide or something like liver disease. That means that death by medical mistakes is a pretty damn common thing. And to add a little bit more credibility to this, I'll also give you some personal experiences I've had on this subject. My wife, that's right, my wife Becca that you see on this channel a lot, had open heart surgery for a heart defect 3 years ago. Her local cardiologist here in our town was insistently trying to send her to a local heart surgeon that was a personal friend of his. Well, we researched that doctor both online and by asking one of our nurse friends that worked in the hospital he does surgeries in. And we found out that people call him Dr. Death. That's right. They call him, the nurses in that hospital call him Dr. Death behind his back. And, then we found out that he had the worst mortality rate among heart surgeons in my state. My wife's cardiologist refused to refer to another surgeon. So my wife had to switch cardiologists right in the middle of all of this. And her new cardiologist told her that no doctor in our city was qualified to repair that rare heart defect that she had. So he referred her to Dr. Baker at USC, where her surgery was just a 100% success. Dr. Baker is a rock star. But would you trust a guy that the nurses at the hospital called Dr. Death? In another instance, last year, my father went to his doctor to get fluid drained from his knee, and he almost lost everything when he developed a staph infection in his knee where the needle was injected. And on an even more personal note, my mother died of a massive brain tumor when I was 25. She had severe headaches, spells of vision loss, and vertigo for 3 years before that. And her doctor kept telling her over and over that it was hay fever. And he kept pumping her full of antihistamines. Well, after 3 years, the tumor was bigger than an orange when she suddenly fell down and died. Also, a very good friend of mine was dealing with back pain from a combat injury while he was in the military. And his doctors kept prescribing him large amounts of opioids for years, which of course he became addicted to. His family kept pleading with the doctors to stop giving him drugs, but they kept giving him as much opioids as he wanted, it seemed. And that friend is no longer with us today. So just because someone is able to get through medical school does not make them intelligent, ethical, and definitely doesn't instill common sense into them. It's safe to say that medical malpractice has touched all of us to some extent. So that should answer your question as to why someone wouldn't trust a doctor. There's thousands of doctors out there right now telling people that natural COVID immunity doesn't exist. I mean, how ridiculous is that? But I will say, probably the majority of the doctors out there take their job very seriously and really care about their patients' health, and really try to innovate with modern technology and medicines so they can provide better and better service to their patients. But that's not always the case. But as with anything in life, trust should be earned and not freely given. Even with doctors. Doctors are human beings. Some are diligent, hardworking, and take their oaths seriously. Others are lazy or profit motivated and treat patients like a drive-thru at a McDonald's. So, you have the right to demand that your doctor earn your trust. Our next question is from Patrick in Big Bear, California. My uncle lives in Big Bear and my sister used to live in Big Bear. Patrick wrote, "Great channel, Desert Dog. You provide a great commentary on modern developments in the hunting world, but with old school charm and common sense. You're a mix of old and new that really appeals to me. I'm writing you to get your opinion on the mountain lion kill video that was just posted on YouTube and is going viral right now. I put a link to this video at the bottom of the letter, hoping you'll view it. Although most people agree that it was a justified self-defense shooting, many hunters are surprisingly criticizing him for being so emotional about it. After watching that mountain lion video, your hunting ethics commentary about our emotional attachment to nature instantly popped in my mind. What are your thoughts on that video?" Well, in case you haven't seen that video, I'm about to show you a clip of it. So please remove young children or really sensitive people from the room before watching this. And 3, 2, 1.
You get back. You get back. You get back. You get back. Back. No. No. Motherfucker. I just had to shoot this fucking mountain lion. They fucking pounced at me and I popped it in the fucking face. Oh, holy shit. Holy fucking shit. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Holy shit. Holy fucking shit. Oh my God. It's young. Stupid cat. I shot it right in the face. Oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. Yeah, I'm creeping up right through here. I mean, look at this. One, like that's where he was at. Look. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe 5 yards. Maybe 5 yards. And I told him over and over, get back, get back, get back. No, don't do it. And he reared back. And I had my Glock on him and I was about to pull the trigger, but I was hoping he would leave and he freaking went to pounce. Oh my God. I hate to do it. I don't want to do it. You never know, guys. You never know. Always watch what you're doing. Pay attention. Watch your back. Wow. Look at that. Such a pretty creature. So pretty. Hate to do it. Sorry, kitty. Sorry, kitty.
That was a pretty crazy video, wasn't it? One of the reasons why my Glock's always on my side out there. But as you can see in that video, that cat was not going to back down. Cats are one of those animals where it's almost impossible to know their motives if the animal isn't suffering from an injury or a disease. And that cat looked very healthy from the examination of the teeth in the body in that video. Cats just do crazy things and have a different thought process than other animals. But the cat's motive really isn't that important here. Making the correct split-second decision to save your life is what was important here. This guy went out of his way to try to avoid shooting this mountain lion. You know, he desperately tried to scare it off, and the cat just seemed to get more and more aggressive with each attempt. The fact that this cat was well within leaping distance makes this situation a worst-case scenario, in my opinion. You know, this guy didn't panic like most people would, and most importantly, he didn't run or turn his back to the cat. And he brought his Glock while bow hunting, which was also a good decision that morning. It looked like the cat was about to pounce, and he shot it in the face. But after that is where the real story transpires in my mind. The guy didn't gloat or congratulate himself after he killed that cat. He was emotionally distraught as he examined the cat and recognized how beautiful of a creature it was. He even apologized for being forced to take its life. You know, it was a very moving moment, and very few hunters, in my opinion, would have shown that cat that much respect in that situation. And this brings us back to my only problem with many predator hunters out there. You know, many of them view all predators as creatures that need to be eradicated on sight from this earth. And I just don't agree with that, and think that line of thinking is detrimental to the ecosystem. If predators are threatening my family or animals, I will take steps to control them, so don't get me wrong. I also understand that culling needs to take place when populations get out of control, like, you know, it does very often with coyotes. But if I'm way out in the middle of the woods or way out in the middle of the Mojave Desert, I leave them alone because they aren't doing any harm, and I have no desire to eat them. I don't kill just to kill, and the man in this video obviously feels the same way. To sum it all up, in this video, you saw a cat being a cat in its natural environment. You also got to see a rare glimpse at a truly ethical hunter who respects wildlife and doesn't take killing lightly. People who criticize that guy are way out of line here. And our next question is from Dave. Dave didn't tell me where he's from, but it's just Dave. Dave wrote a very heartfelt letter to me that I really enjoyed reading. And at the end of the letter, he asked, I just found a nicely sporterized 1902 Spanish Mauser with a new 300 Savage barrel. The action was built in Spain. From what I read, these are quality actions which were built for the original 7x57 Mauser loading and should be plenty strong enough for a 300 Savage, which has pretty much the same SAMI pressure specifications as the 7x57. I only use reloading data from reputable manuals. It was taken in trade by a commercial gun shop. The owner says he hasn't shot it, but wouldn't be afraid to, which makes me feel better. This gun has everything I like. What do you think? Thanks. Well, Dave, thank you for the great letter. You know, some Spanish Mausers are known to have really weak metallurgy, especially the 1893 and 1916 receivers. And I wouldn't buy a sporterized rifle on those receivers. Um, Basically, the only Spanish Mausers I'm really interested in personally would be built on a 1943 or a 1944 receiver. And, I might take a chance and buy it, but only if the bore checked out with a bore scope. Always bore scope a used rifle before buying it. But if you do get that rifle for additional safety, for the first couple of shots, you could set up the rifle in your lead sled and pull the trigger from a distance with a string. I've done that many times as an extra precaution when I fire first shots on an old sporterized rifle. Our next question is from Thomas from Ohio. Thomas wrote, I heard that steel shot destroying barrels was just a rumor that gun manufacturers started to make everyone buy new guns. What do you think? As with most rumors and conjecture in the gun world, that rumor is 100% false. Steel shot won't wear out your barrel like some people claim, especially with modern wad technology. The problem is that I've seen many bulged barrels at the end of older guns with fixed chokes. Basically, the muzzle portion of those old fixed choke guns weren't made to handle shot that won't deform to the muzzle diameter before it leaves. In fact, many old screw-in chokes couldn't handle steel shot either and tended to warp or sometimes get stuck in the barrel. And our next question is from Tim from San Diego, California. Tim wrote, your channel is awesome. Please don't change a thing. I'm starting to realize that many of the big hunting names on the internet no longer provide reliable information about guns and ammo. Some of them are obviously making sponsors happy, but many of them seem to have lost touch with hunting in general. Are you seeing this? Well, Tim, I think that many of these guys are just running out of material and video ideas. They've done so many videos over the years. So content quality is suffering, and they're posting either fluff pieces for sponsors or just making videos with less substance in them. Many of these guys rely on clicks for their income. So they need to pump out a lot of content in order to pay the bills. And I get what they're doing, but it can cause people to lose interest if they do it too often. As far as these personalities losing touch, I think that's a matter of perspective. When you constantly rub elbows with industry celebrities, publishers, producers, and gun company CEOs, it's easy to lose focus on the guys freezing their asses off in a duck blind every weekend, or the guys glassing till their eyes hurt after work every day to find a good buck. I think you just have to relate to the person making the videos in order to enjoy them, which is why YouTube is so awesome, actually, because it lets you physically see the person giving you the information. And this is a huge improvement over the internet forum days where random people with no face or platform posted random things. I used to moderate several forums at the height of, the forum days, and banned fake people giving fake information on a daily basis. And a lot of them were companies too. I could tell you from experience that most of the stuff posted on forums in those days was just absolute crap. Most of the people commenting on guns never even owned the guns they complained about. Most of the load data was complete BS, and most bullet performance reviews and comments were just totally fake. But with YouTube, there's actually material to see, and at least the general public expects to see what's being reviewed or talked about in action, adding to more authenticity than an internet forum ever could. Now all those bullshitters from the forum days roam the comment sections on YouTube videos. So there's hunting celebrities that I relate to and some that I don't relate to. I relate to a guy like Randy Newberg, and even though he has to keep sponsors happy, he seems to keep it real about hunting and hunting ethics. And many of his experiences, they mirror mine. Another guy I relate to is Steve Rinella. His focus on ethics and conservation is commendable. Not a lot of hunting personalities are really doing that. And even though he has big sponsors like Weatherby, he isn't afraid to show his Weatherby shotgun taking a shit in the middle of a duck hunt and borrowing the guide's Beretta to get his limit. That's right. He showed that on TV. You can't keep it any more real than that. On the flip side of that, there's some celebrities in the gun and hunting industry that I really don't relate to very well. One of those people is Randy Wakeman. I find that at least half of what he claims doesn't coincide with my personal experiences. He probably has much more shotgunning experience than I do, but what he often says just doesn't mesh with my experiences. I see a guy shooting clays in a field and trolling manufacturers at the SHOT Show, and I think that just kind of turns me off of him. Besides the fact that most of what he says, I experience just the opposite of that. And I know he has sponsors to keep happy too. And, I'm sure he's a delightful guy in person, but I just don't relate to his media presence. But other people absolutely love his videos and articles. So you have to relate to the person, and YouTube allows you to do that. I would say that 90% of the YouTube videos I watch are from really small channels with guys that do real hunts, have no sponsors, and work their butts off to be successful or unsuccessful. I really enjoy watching stuff like that. And many of those guys are way better hunters than the celebrity hunters that are out there. Our next question is from Jerry from Houston, Texas. Only a couple hours away from Swamp Doggy. Jerry from Houston wrote, "Steel shotgun ammo mandates were an attempt by liberal Democrats to end hunting. They thought they ended hunting by banning lead, but it didn't work. I feel sorry for all the hunters who live in commie states and have to shoot that crap." Well, I'm really sorry to burst your bubble, Jerry, but steel shot mandates are mostly a conservative Republican thing. I know I just destroyed your whole worldview, but you can mostly blame Republicans for steel shot. The first real federal lead shot ban was in 1976 when Gerald Ford was president, who, by the way, is a Republican. But that ban was very limited in scope, wasn't enforced really, and was largely ignored. The first serious ban on lead shot was in 1986 while Ronald Reagan was president. The ban initially only applied to limited areas, but was set up to gradually phase out lead shot. The Reagan administration and the Republican executive branch supported phasing out lead shot. Then in 1991, George Bush Sr., who was adamantly against lead shot, put the nail in the coffin by directing the Fish and Wildlife Service to ban all lead shot for all waterfowl hunting. Again, we have a Republican banning lead. Conservative Republican states like Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah ban lead shot in their state wildlife areas. And these are fully Republican states banning lead shot on their own state land. So even your home state of Texas did this, and some of these states banned lead shot for waterfowl before the federal government did. George W. Bush, I think it was in 2007, 2008, even attempted to get rid of lead fishing tackle on federal land before he left office. And in my home state of California, we've had one Republican governor in the last 23 years. And guess what? That Republican governor signed California's first lead ammo ban into law. So lead bans are not a commie liberal Democrat thing. It's actually a Republican thing that both parties support. I personally don't support bans on anything and think some of the evidence might be a little bit unconvincing, but I'm just stating the facts on our history of lead bans and who's doing it. It's the Republicans. And our last question is from Harry in Florida. Harry wrote, I watched your 6.8 Western program a few days ago, and it changed my outlook on hunting cartridges forever. The part in the video where you slapped down that 30-06 round on the table and exclaimed, my 30-06 loads have the same velocity as the 6.8 Western loads with the same bullet weight. It flicked on a light switch in my head. I actually spent the next day in my office looking at 30-06 load data, and holy crap, you were right. Since I never shoot past 300 yards, cartridges like the 6.8 Western make absolutely no sense anymore. I usually roll my eyes when people arbitrarily call a cartridge hype, but you backed up your claim very well, something nobody else on the internet has done. The more I see things for what they are, the more I appreciate that old 30-06. So this morning, I bought my first 30-06 rifle. Thanks, Desert Dog. Well, that just warms my heart, and I'm glad that you finally see the light there, Harry. Short of dangerous game, there's really nothing the 30-06 won't do. I have an untold number of rifles and cartridges in my collection, but I almost always reach for the 30-06. I mean, it's just a reloader's dream cartridge for hunting, and its versatility is just unmatched. And honestly, if I sold my entire collection and only got to keep one rifle, it'd be a Model 70 and 30-06. Well, that's all for this month. Here's some hunting and fishing memes that some of my subscribers sent me recently. And that concludes another edition of Hunt Camp Mail. Have a safe Halloween and enjoy November's hunting opportunities. You can reach me with any questions or comments at desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. As always, thanks for watching and good hunting.